Texas Sky, and today I am going to share with you a fall wreath that we're going to create. This is something completely different than anything that I've ever showed you before. We're not using burlap, we're not using deco mesh. We're going to just use some fabric and we're going to make a wreath that I think is really pretty. It's super easy to do. It's a little tedious because you have to cut a lot of fabric, but I think that it's something that you would probably really love to do. It's a craft you could do with your kids because no hot glue is involved or anything like that. It's a very safe craft to be able to share with your family, with your children. It'd be a fun thing. I'm going to do it in some fall colors. The wreath that I'm doing is, like I said, it's a fabric wreath, and if the Mean Man could show what I'm doing here, that'd be great. The Mean Man was texting. Thank you, Mean Man, for always being willing to help me with things. This is basically the wreath I'm going to show you how to make. It's just fabric. It's 2x2 squares of fabric that I use putting them into a styrofoam wreath. Before we get into that and telling you what we're going to be using to make this, I do want to be sure that you guys remember to check out undertexassky.com. You need to go to my blog so you can see all of the things that we have going on. There's lots of other things besides just wreaths that are happening. I've got recipes, I've got home improvement projects, I've got just some redos on old furniture. We redid our fountain that was ready for the trash heap, and the Mean Man did a great job of bringing that back to life. So be sure and check out undertexassky.com because the majority of what we do are not going to appear on my YouTube channel, so I want to be sure that you see it. So back to the wreath that we're going to make today. When I made this particular wreath, I used one of the more porous with the flat side styrofoam wreath. This is a wreath that's easy to stick things into, but it's also not very sturdy. I've made a couple of wreaths using this type of styrofoam wreath base, and they've fallen off the door or whatever, and they've broken, and I end up just throwing them away, and that is a terrible feeling when you have to throw something away that you work so hard to make. So that's what we're making, and I'm going to tell you real quickly what you're going to need. I got one of the extruded wreaths. These seem to be a little bit sturdier than those flat styrofoam wreaths. You can use any kind of wreath that you'd like that's styrofoam, but yeah, that's, I'm sorry, Mean Man's talking to me. This wreath that I'm using today is a 17-inch wreath, so it's also bigger than this wreath. You know, if it's going to go on your front door, it needs to have some size to it because people are going to be looking at it from the street. So you want it to, in my opinion, you want it to be a nice size. This one's 17 inches. I purchased some fabric in half a yard increments. So I bought 4 types of fabric, a half a yard each, and these were super cheap. I think I spent less than $10 on all of this fabric combined, and I'm hopeful that it's going to be enough fabric to do this wreath. I'm not 100% sure, but we're going to find out. Of course, I don't know, you may be like me, and I also have a big drawer full of wreath scraps. You can definitely use fabric scraps on this as well. It's just easy. It's you know, there's no serious pattern. You don't have to worry about having more of one color and less of another. As long as you mix everything in to the wreath, then that's great. And the first thing that you're going to want to do, oh, I also have some little fall things because I'm making a fall wreath, so I bought some little fall embellishments to maybe put on the wreath. The first thing you're going to want to do is the part that is the most tedious, and this is a very good reason why having a cutting mat and a rotary cutter just makes your life so much easier when you're crafting. Especially when you're using the deco mesh, it's wonderful, and clearly when you're using the fabric, the rotary cutter is great. And so what I use for this particular wreath is I take my fabric and I cut them into 2-inch strips. That's the first thing that I do. And so to do that, I just take my fabric and I fold it over and over, and this is why Your scissors are probably not going to cut this if you do it like this. But if you have a very nice sharp blade, which I just changed the blade out on my rotary cutter today, I can really stack this up to where I get several layers of fabric. And that's fine when you're starting your first cut. I've got a little bit of a tattered edge. I know you probably can't see, but there's a tattered edge on this fabric I'm going to cut away. And if your fabric has a white border, which a lot of fabric does, like this one does, so you've got your print and then there's this little white border. When you roll it up like this, it's real easy to cut that off all at one time, like I'm about to do here. And I have a ruler. So what did I tell you? Half a yard of 4 different colors of fabric, fall colors in this case. I've got my ruler, I've got my rotary cutter, I've got my wreath form, and we're just going to use some tacky glue on this. And then you're going to need something that's going to be able to insert your fabric squares into your wreath. This is some kind of a crochet thing. I have no idea. At one point I thought, I'm really going to learn how to crochet, and so I bought a crochet kit, and this was in it. Needless to say, I did not in fact learn how to crochet. I can do like a chain stitch, and that's about it. I never really figured out how to put those together. One of my great ideas. Thank goodness that was a less expensive hobby that I bailed out on. There have been many others that I've tried that I bailed out on that cost me a little bit more money. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this little tattered edge off first thing. So I'm starting with a nice straight edge, and you can see a sharp blade on a rotary cutter is a fantastic thing to have. So on my cutting board, there's a ruler, and so I can come every 2 inches, and then with that sharp blade, give it a cut, 2 inches, give it a cut, and so forth. I'm absolutely not going to bore you with having y'all watch me do all of these cuts of this whole thing. But what you come out with are these strips, 2-inch strips of fabric. And these 2-inch strips of fabric, you're going to want to cut down into 2-inch squares. So you're going to come every 2 inches, and you're going to just do a cut. And I'm just going to stack these on top of each other so you can see what I'm doing. Try to get them, you know, as even as possible. This is not an exact science. If your squares aren't perfectly square, the world is not going to stop turning. It's going to be just fine. So I just come, take my strip, and then I just do the same thing. I measure 2 inches and cut. 2 inches, cut, come over 2 inches, and cut, so on and so on. I'm not going to show you all of that, but then you come out with these 2-inch squares. So what I'm going to do right now is I am going to go ahead and cut all of my fabric into the squares, and I'll be right back and show you how we actually get them into the wreath form and how fabulous that turns out. I'll be right back. Okay, so I've cut all of our little squares of fabric, the 2 by 2 inch squares of fabric, so there's a lot. And I'm really hoping that the half a yard of the 4 colors is going to cover, but this is a big wreath, so we're going to, you know, it may not cover all of it. We're going to just cross our fingers. But I did want to show you, I've started putting them into the wreath form, and I want to show you what I did. First thing I did is I just had these little plastic cups, and I took some tacky glue, and I went ahead and just made a pool of it in this little cup, so I don't have to continue trying to pick up the bottle and use that. It's just more convenient to do that. So, and then I took my little funky crochet hooky thingy, and then I just go 1 square at a time, and I kind of have a bit of a pattern going. I did purple, brown, white, yellow. That's what's going in my mind as I'm putting these in. So on right here, I don't know if the mean man can show you, I've got, well, here, I'll hold this up and you can see I've already started, and this is how I started. You can start anywhere you want to start. It just, to me, kind of makes sense to start in the middle of the front of the wreath and then we're going to fill in as we go. But I'm going to show you how I'm putting these in. I'm taking my little square of fabric, and then I'm wrapping it around. And the thing I like about this little crochet hooky thing is that it's pointed, but it's kind of rounded. It's not sharp, because I don't want to be poking a hole through the fabric. I want to just poke it into the wreath. So what I'm doing is, you can see I'm taking the square, I'm putting this in the center of the square, wrapping it around, and then I'm just grabbing it where I've got the point side showing here. And then I'm going into my glue and I'm just dipping it into the glue, getting it wet. And then I'm going to come, and you can see, I don't know distance. I'm not real good at being spatial as far as that goes, but you can see, me man, are you close on that? You can see? And I just stick it in. I don't cram it all the way in. I don't put it in with force. I'm just sticking it in a little bit. And I'm going to take the next one. I mean, you can hear it when it goes into the wreath. You can hear a little crunch sound. But here I'm going to wrap it around, grab it, dip it in my glue, come over, stick it in. Not in far, not enough to stick a hole in it, but just sticking it in. What am I doing here? Yellow. And yellow is next. And once you get this first row done, I mean, you don't have to be really precise with your colors, essentially, and you know, you don't want to have an abundance of one color in one section. So that's what you just need to watch for as you're going and putting these in here. And you can see, I mean, it's not a science. I'm not spending a lot of time. I'm not thinking about it. I'm not measuring. I'm just eyeballing where things are. When you put it in there, it fluffs out. And you're like, well, there's a gap in between them. Well, there is, but there's going to be more of these little squares that are going to be going in on each side. You can understand and see how, I mean, that this is a tedious process. It takes a while. Honestly, I mean, 5 minutes or so, I had this whole thing done. It's something that you can do while you're sitting watching television. Matter of fact, I've had the Olympics on in the background, so I'm listening to what's going on the Olympics. But this is essentially it. I'm going to continue doing this, and I will be back when I get a little bit further fullness in the wreath, and I'll kind of tell you what my time is taking and so forth also, so you can see how long it's going to take. But it's super easy, and I'm going to continue doing this, and I'll be back. Okay, now as you can see, I've just about gotten done. I'm going back through and looking for any places where I can see the actual wreath. I had plenty of fabric. As you can see, I don't know if the mean man can show you. I can move this. I still had plenty of fabric left, and so don't be afraid of running out. You could actually make your spaces smaller between the little pieces of fabric if you wanted to. I did go in after I had finished. I found some old fabric that I had in that scrap. I added some of this orange and some of this green because the little thing that I wanted to use had orange and green in it, and I didn't really have any orange and green in the wreath, and I did want to make it look a little bit fall-like. So you can see as far as how long it took, it is basically 3 o'clock. I started doing this at about 11:45. So it took, you know, a couple of hours to get done, but it is super easy to do, and it is so cute. Now attaching, you know, your embellishments to it. I see a little bald spot here I'm going to fill in. And the great thing about this is you don't have to get so worried about having clumps of a certain color in a certain area. There's more purple in some areas, more brown, but it's okay because once you add all your other little things in there, it just balances out the whole way. I think this is so pretty. And like I said, it's super easy, and this is something that you can do with your kids. Now, getting back to attaching this, I ended up using some floral wire where I attached the sides through here, and that's another cool thing. It actually wraps around here. You can see it because all of this fabric I made sure fluffed out around it. And then I used a couple of T-pins, which you can see the T-pin right here. Can you close up on that, mean man, where you can see this little T-pin? I just stuck it into the wreath, and I balanced the embellishment on top of it, and there's one over here too. You can't see it, it's behind this fabric, but you can fluff your fabric up where you can't see it. I'm not overly worried about that showing because it's really small. But anyway, there you go. I don't have any idea what to call this wreath or this technique. It's a fabric square smushy fabric wreath. I have no idea. But it's something I hope you try. Try it with your kids. Y'all have a good time doing it. Be sure and go to my website under texassky.com, and like I said, check out everything we've got going over there. Give this wreath a try, and I hope that your day and your week is blessed. See you next time.